Welcome to Yɛresiesie Yɛn Ho, Preparation for Reparations podcast. I'm your host, Esther Xosei. Before we begin, as is our tradition, let us pour libation to honor our ancestors and ancestresses in order to set our intentions for this work of preparation. We pour libation first to the Creator, source of all wisdom and justice. To Mother Earth, who holds our stories. To the elements that sustain us. We pour libation to our revered ancestors and ancestresses who prepared the way, those known and unknown, those named and unnamed, who resisted, who persevered, who prepared the way. We honor especially the wisdom keepers who maintained our traditions, the griots who preserved our people's stories, the warriors who protected our people, the healers who tended our wounds, the teachers who passed down knowledge, the builders who created sanctuary, the visionaries who saw beyond their time. We pour to those who maintained the ways of our people through the storms of the Ma'angamizi, who taught us that preparation is power. We pour to our family ancestors and ancestresses, whose blood flows in our veins, whose wisdom guides our steps, whose struggles light our path. We pour to the coming generations, for whom we prepare, for whom we build, for whom we strengthen ourselves. May our words honor their sacrifices. May our works advance our people's struggle to effect and secure holistic repairs. May our preparation create the future that our ancestors and ancestresses envisioned. Ashe, Ashe, Asheo. And now, let us begin our exploration of Yɛresiesie Yɛn Ho. These powerful words from our Akan ancestors and ancestresses that mean we are preparing ourselves, not waiting, not asking for permission, but actively preparing. These words carry centuries of wisdom, determination, and vision. When we say Yɛresiesie Yɛn Ho, we're not just speaking, we're declaring our commitment to action. So, how do we pronounce this? So, the first syllable is Ye. Ye. So the E is pronounced like the E in bed. It's an open sound, not a closed one, like A. It's Ye. Re, Sie. Each one is a distinct syllable. An emphasis should be placed on each part. So, Ye, Re, Sie, Ye, Re, and then we have Yen, yen, which sounds like yen, Y-E-H-N. Again, the E is like the E in bed. And the final word is ho, which sounds like H-O-H, ho. So in total, it is Yɛresiesie Yɛn Ho. That is how we pronounce it. And it's a term that we've chosen deliberately to really speak to this active work of preparation for reparations. This podcast exists because reparations isn't something that just happens to us or for us. Reparations are something that we actively make happen. For too long, the conversation about reparations has focused on what others must give us. But our ancestors and ancestresses teach us differently. They show us that the power of preparation lies in our hands. Before we continue, I want to acknowledge the Maangamizi Educational Trust, MET, the educational arm of the Stop the Maangamizi campaign, which is sponsoring this podcast, and I happen to be the executive director of the Maangamizi Educational Trust. The MET is dedicated to building narrative and cultural power to move society towards a vision of holistic reparative justice as planet repairs for the continuum of the Maangamizi. So that is holistic reparatory justice for the continuum of the Maangamizi, which we see as planet repairs, ultimately. And that is the interconnection of everything cognitive justice, everything reparatory justice, and everything environmental justice. Now, for those new to the term, Maangamizi is a key Swahili term, and it describes the intentional and continuing process of genocide and ethnocide against African people, coupled with ecocide and the devastation of African lands, waterways, forests, plants, animals, and entire ecosystems. These interconnected crimes emerge from chattel enslavement, wars of conquest, colonialism, and neocolonialism. The Maangamizi encompasses the deliberate destruction and dispossession of African peoplehood by systematic violence, that is physical violence, structural violence, and other types of violence, murder, torture, cultural erasure, and forced disconnection from ancestral lands. The violent dismantling and dispossession of African nationhood via military invasion, mass killings, forced territorial partitions, political subjugation, resource theft and economic domination, and the devastation and dispossession of African ancestral territories by resource extraction, forced removals, land grabs, pollution, deforestation, mining, and environmental destruction. Now, this comprehensive system of destruction and dispossession targets African bodies, minds, and our communities. It targets our African ways of knowing and being, while simultaneously destroying and alienating us as African people from the natural environments and ecosystems upon which our lives, our culture, and knowledge systems depend. The impact of this continuing crime against humanity reverberates across generations, shaping present-day realities for African people globally. As scholar, activist, artist Akala powerfully puts it, Maangamizi, meaning African Holocaust, because we paid a hell of a cost and don't really know what was lost, and the process ain't ever stopped. The Met builds public imagination and cultural will to counteract the Maangamizi through advancing public education and narrative change. Our work supports transformative reparations that emphasizes local grassroots agency and dignity restoration, encouraging ground-up leadership and participation in policy and decision-making, addressing root causes of the Maangamizi, as well as challenging unequal power relationships and structures of domination. Education plays a key role in stopping and preventing repetition of the Maangamizi by providing methods for addressing its impact while promoting the knowledge, skills, values and cultural change needed to prevent the repetition of these group-targeted atrocities and injustices. As we gather today, we cannot ignore the world shifting around us. We see nations formerly colonized by Western powers now forming powerful economic blocs. We witness the BRICS nations expanding their influence, challenging the economic order built on the exploitation of our ancestors and ancestresses. These global shifts remind us that power dynamics can and do change, but only for those who prepare. Think about it. When our ancestors and ancestresses faced the greatest of challenges, they didn't wait for solutions to come from outside. In the face of oppression, they built communities. In the face of cultural assault, they preserved our traditions, our cultures, our value systems. In the face of economic exclusion, they created their own systems of exchange. They understood that preparation is in itself a form of power. This wisdom wasn't just about survival. It was about transformation. When we say Yɛresiesie Yɛn Ho, we're connecting to this ancestral overstanding. We're stating that we don't need to wait for external recognition or permission to begin our healing and rebuilding. Our active preparation, our intentional strengthening of our minds, our bodies, our spirits, our communities and economic systems is itself a form of power. By preparing ourselves, we create the conditions for justice rather than simply demanding it. Our preparation transforms us from supplicants to actors, from people who request repair to people who build the capacity and power to ensure it happens. This is why preparation is not just a prelude to power, it is power itself. The global conversation on reparations has reached unprecedented levels in recent years. The African Union has declared 2025 the Year of Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparations, a historic recognition at the continental level. On the 9th of April, here in the UK, in London to be precise, Togo's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and Togolese Abroad, Professor Xosei, will be hosting the London Conference 125 years later, Pan-Africanism and a Dialogue on Reparations, marking the 125th anniversary of the first Pan-African Conference that happened in London in 1900, and therefore creating a powerful platform for dialogue on Pan-Africanism and reparations. We also have, in the UK, the All-Party Parliamentary Group for African Reparations, which was initiated in 2021. And for the last 2 years, it has organised groundbreaking conferences, creating unprecedented political space for these conversations. Many of us have also heard about California Reparations Task Force, which has conducted one of the most comprehensive state-level examinations of African chattel enslavement and its harms in US history, while the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent provides a global platform through which to voice our demands. Meanwhile, the Alliance of Sahel States, the AES, is demonstrating practical sovereignty building that challenges neo-colonial state formations and economic structures. These developments aren't happening in isolation. They represent a growing global movement. But we must ask ourselves, who is driving these initiatives? Are they truly emerging from our communities, or are they being shaped without our full knowledge and participation? The International Social Movement for African Reparations, that is the ISMA, has been building power from the grassroots up for decades, organizing across continents, creating educational frameworks, and developing holistic approaches to repair long before any African or Caribbean government acknowledged this issue. Similarly, movements like NCOBRA, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, the Pan-African Reparations Rebellion Groundings, and forthcoming Pan-African People's Assembly on African Reparations in the UK, as well as countless other community-led initiatives, have kept reparatory justice alive when official channels refused to engage. We cannot accept the principle of nothing about us without us as just a slogan. It must be our operational reality. While we acknowledge the importance of state and multi-state level recognition like that of the African Union and institutional platforms like the UN Permanent Forum, true reparatory justice can only happen when our communities are in the driver's seat. States rarely deliver justice unless the people demand, define it, defend it, and secure it. The Alliance of Sahel States, the AES, stands out as the most powerful contemporary example of applied reparations or reparations in praxis. Not waiting for acknowledgement or permission, but actively reclaiming sovereignty through concrete actions. They aren't just making declarations or forming committees, they're rebuilding economic systems, reclaiming resources, and restructuring relationships with former colonial powers, and in some instances, continuing ones. This is self-repair manifested at the state level, the very embodiment of Yɛresiesie Yɛn Ho, scaled to national, or should I say, transnational action. Their approach demonstrates precisely what we mean when we say that preparation builds power. By strengthening themselves internally and collectively, unifying. They've created the leverage to enforce their will externally. This is the model we must study and adapt, understanding that real reparatory justice isn't granted by the powerful, but claimed through our own people's power. Most states, however, are not following this example, which is why our communities must lead the way. The AES shows us that when we build power through preparation, we don't need to beg for justice. We create the conditions to demand and secure it. So I ask, are we prepared to lead this movement from the ground up? Are we ready to define what true repair looks like for our people and insist that our voices shaped every aspect of the process to effect and secure holistic reparations or repair? Each episode of this Preparation for Reparations podcast will explore different dimensions of this preparation work. We'll discover how communities are taking active roles in their own repair. We'll learn from those doing the work right now. We'll share tools and strategies for community self-repair. Most importantly, we'll understand how each of us can contribute to this collective process of preparation. This isn't just another discussion about what others should do for us or owe us. This is about what we are doing for ourselves right now. This is about taking control of our own repair, our own healing, our own futures. Whether you're just beginning to think about reparations or you're already deeply involved in this work, this podcast is for you. Because preparation isn't just about getting ready. It's about claiming our power to shape the meaning of reparations, what it will look like, and to be able to enforce our will. Today, we're exploring how our contemporary preparation work directly advances reparatory justice, embodying Professor Chinweizu's vision or conceptual framework of holistic repairs. As Professor Chinweizu powerfully states, reparation is not just about money. It is not even mostly about money. In fact, money is not even 1% of what reparation is about. Reparation is mostly about making repairs, self-made repairs on ourselves, mental repairs, psychological repairs, cultural repairs, organizational repairs, social repairs, institutional repairs, technological repairs, economic repairs, political repairs, educational repairs, repairs of every type we need in order to recreate sustainable Black societies. When we examine today's global landscape, this wisdom becomes even more urgent. In a world where technology companies extract data from billions of people, where artificial intelligence systems are being built on datasets that exclude or misrepresent African knowledges, where climate change disproportionately affects our communities, while we contributed least to the problem, comprehensive repair must address these modern manifestations of historical injustice. This framework guides our understanding of preparations. When we say Yɛresiesie Yɛn Ho, we're addressing what Professor Chinwezu calls our peculiar condition, our peculiar experience. So I'm now going to share with you some categories of preparation. First one being mental and psychological preparation. In an age of social media algorithms that amplify divisive content, mental and psychological preparation has taken on a new impetus. Just last month, researchers at the Digital African Futures Institute documented how digital platforms promote content that reinforces colonial narratives about African people and nations while suppressing indigenous knowledge systems. This isn't coincidence. It's the continuation of historical patterns now embedded in technological systems. So, our preparation must then include healing from historical and intergenerational trauma that continues now also through new forms of media. It must entail rebuilding our sense of self-worth in the face of direct colonialism, but also digital forms of colonialism. Strengthening our collective consciousness against divisive algorithms. Developing psychological resilience as climate and ecological anxiety disproportionately affects our communities. Addressing internalized oppression that is often reinforced on social media. And also building emotional freedom in spaces designed to capture our attention and incarcerate our imaginations. So, as Professor Chinwezu reminds us, we must therefore find out what deficiencies in our sense of identity, what quirks in our mentality, what faults in our feelings of solidarity made it possible for us to succumb to the divide and conquer tactics of our exploiters. Moving on to some examples of cultural and educational preparation. So look at the recent struggles over curriculum across the diaspora, from Florida's restrictions on African American studies to the United Kingdom's attempt to minimize the impact of colonialism on our people. We're witnessing orchestrated efforts to erase our people's stories again. Yet, simultaneously, African knowledge systems are being mined for pharmaceuticals, for climate solutions, for technological innovations, without attribution or compensation. So, our preparation must accelerate, preserving our people's stories, their histories, herstories, our traditions through community archives and digital platforms, creating independent educational systems that center our African people's experiences and knowledges, strengthening intergenerational knowledge transfer before more of our elders, who are our libraries, make transition. Maintaining, renewing our languages and cultural practices as countermeasures to attempts to homogenize us, especially in digital spaces. Developing our own curricula that prepare our children for the challenges ahead. And documenting oral traditions using technologies that we control. Here, Professor Chinwezu calls for the creation of a Black heritage education curriculum to teach us our true history and thereby restore our self-worth as descendants of the pioneers of world civilization, must guide our work. When thinking about spiritual and religious preparation, what comes to mind for me is that as global instability increases, spiritual resilience becomes more essential. Our ancestral spiritual practices contain wisdom for navigating uncertain and perilous times. From the principles of Ma'at to the philosophy of Ubuntu, our traditions offer frameworks for collective healing that the world and our people desperately needs now. So, we must intensify reconnecting with ancestral spiritual practices that ground us in these turbulent times. We must intensify strengthening spiritual communities that provide mutual aid and support, developing healing rituals that address our contemporary traumas, preserving sacred knowledge increasingly threatened by maldevelopment and extractivism, building spiritual resilience for the long-term but beautiful struggle, maintaining sacred sites, facing climate impacts and commercial maldevelopment. Now, thinking about institutional and economic preparation, the global economic landscape is shifting rapidly. The dominance of the US dollar is being challenged. Cryptocurrency technologies are creating new financial systems. Supply chains are being reorganized. These changes create both threats and opportunities for our communities. Consider recent developments. So Ghana's initiative, for instance, to purchase oil using gold instead of dollars, Nigeria's experiments with digital currency, Kenya's leadership in mobile payment systems, South Africa's role in BRICS economic coordination. These aren't separate, or should I say disconnected from reparations. They're showing that alternative economic architectures are not only necessary but possible, and that they can either exclude us or include us. So, our preparation on the institutional and economic front must accelerate building cooperative economic structures that can operate across borders, creating sustainable community resources that withstand economic volatility, developing independent institutions that can engage with emerging financial systems, strengthening our collective capacity to participate in new economic models, and establishing economic sovereignty through diversified assets and resources, as well as creating alternative financial systems that serve our communities' needs. Professor Chinwezu warns us that if we do not correct such weaknesses, even if we got billions of dollars in reparations money, even if we got back all our expropriated land, we would fritter it all away yet again. Thinking about political and legal preparation, the international legal landscape around reparations is also evolving rapidly. The UN Permanent Forum on People of African Descent is a new mechanism for accountability. Of course, demands continue to be made on the International Court of Justice to hear more cases related to colonial legacies. There are national reparations committees that have formed in various parts of the Caribbean and the Americas. And we ourselves in the Stop the Maangamizi We Charge Genocide Ecocide campaign have put out a proposal for the People's International Tribunal for Global Justice. However, these developments demand our preparation through building political and legal consciousness about international legal frameworks, their strengths and their limitations, especially where they are inadequate to address our people's justice needs. We also have to prepare through developing leadership capacity to engage in the various levels at which there is a need for diplomatic advocacy. We have to prepare by overstanding legal precedents from successful struggles for repair, but also how any struggle for repair, even if there is a degree of success, can easily be rolled back. Part of our preparation is about creating governance structures that can administer reparatory resources, or what some of us argue are restituted resources. Our preparation must also entail strengthening our advocacy skills to navigate complex negotiations, and also to build the processes and the institutions that require us to strengthen international solidarity across the global south. Professor Chinweizu powerfully reminds us we cannot hope to change the world without changing our ways of seeing the world, our ways of thinking about the world, our ways of organizing our world. Moving on to say a little bit about technological and agricultural preparation. We are witnessing a critical moment in technological development. Artificial intelligence systems are being trained on datasets that embed racist, white supremacist, and colonial biases. Biotechnology companies are patenting genetic resources from African plants. Climate adaptation technologies are being developed without our input, despite our communities being most impacted. So, on the technological and agricultural front, our preparation must include critically engaging with emerging technologies while prioritizing indigenous knowledge production and community control, ensuring that technology serves our people rather than extracting from them. Preserving our indigenous and traditional knowledge systems as repositories of sustainable alternatives that predate and often surpass modern technological solutions. Creating food sovereignty through seed saving and regenerative agricultural practices that our ancestors and ancestresses perfected over millennia. Building technological infrastructure that centers community needs, values, and governance rather than corporate profit or indeed surveillance. Our preparation must include protecting indigenous technologies, that is, our indigenous African technologies, from appropriation, patenting, and exploitation by external entities, as well as maintaining seed sovereignty as climate change and biodiversity loss threatens agricultural systems while corporate interests attempt to monopolize our ancestral and community botanical knowledges. So, coming to environmental and land preparation, what we need to do in these arenas. The climate and ecological crisis brings new urgency to environmental preparation. The African continent, Caribbean nations, and small island states are already experiencing some of the most severe climate impacts, despite contributing least to the problem. In fact, many Caribbean islands and coastal African communities already face existential threats from rising sea levels, intensifying hurricanes, and coastal erosion. These environmental injustices are a direct continuation of the historical exploitation, the same extractive economic systems that drove colonization now drive climate destruction, targeting the same communities that were previously harmed. So, our preparation includes reclaiming our traditional and indigenous land management practices that build resilience, developing sustainable adaptations to changing climate conditions, protecting natural resources increasingly targeted for extraction, preserving biodiversity threatened by commercial agriculture, restoring ecological knowledge that offers solutions to environmental challenges, and building environmental resilience through community-controlled green infrastructure. So what about our social and community preparation? In an age of digital isolation and economic precarity, community bonds become even more essential. The global COVID-19 pandemic revealed the life or death importance of mutual aid networks and community support systems. So on the social and community preparation front, our preparation must strengthen our family structures that provide material and mutual support, as well as in many instances, emotional support. Our community networks that can respond to crises collectively. Our preparation must also strengthen our support systems that reduce dependence on failing institutions that have proven time and time again that they were not designed for us or with our people in mind and can never fully serve or support us. Our preparation must strengthen mutual aid networks that distribute resources according to need, not our levels of greed. Also, the intergenerational bonds that transfer knowledges and wisdom, and our social traditions that maintain our collective identity. As we move through these preparations, let us understand the direct connection between our internal strengthening and our capacity to enforce accountability. When we say Yɛresiesie Yɛn Ho, we're building power in specific, strategic ways. Look at what's happening around us. The UN General Assembly debates on climate reparations, the movement to repudiate odious debts as a form of reparations, the legal challenges being brought against corporations that profited from enslavement, these developments create openings. But through our economic preparation, we must establish community-controlled resourcing mechanisms for the restitution of our looted resources, creating circular economies that keep resources within our communities while building financial capacity to support long-term reparatory work without dependence on those who continue to profit from our exploitation or super exploitation. Through our political preparation, we must develop institutions that translate community knowledges into policy demands, ensuring that those who speak for us are accountable to us, and that representation means more than merely having faces that look like ours in rooms of power. Through our communications preparation, we must create our own channels for knowledge production and dissemination, building media institutions that can challenge dominant narratives while amplifying our collective wisdom across generations and geographies. Thinking about collective power, through our community preparation, we're building mass movements that cannot be ignored, creating networks of solidarity that transcend not only generations, but also the artificial borders that continue to separate us. And through our cultural preparation, we're strengthening our unified voice, reclaiming our narratives and asserting our truths in spaces where we were once silenced. Through our psychological preparation, we're developing unshakable determination, healing from historical trauma while building the mental resilience needed for sustained struggle. Through our spiritual preparation, we are reconnecting with ancestral wisdom and practices, drawing on deep wells of spiritual knowledge that have sustained our people through centuries of resistance to the Maangamizi. This preparation translates directly into enforcement capacity. When we know exactly what was taken, we can demand specific restitution, like the detailed inventory of looted artifacts and cultural sacred hallowed property now being used in repatriation claims. When we have strong institutions, we can sustain long-term accountability campaigns. When we have economic resources that have been restituted to us, we can fund international legal actions, including legal challenges that hold corporations accountable. And we can also fund the development of new legal institutions like the People's International Tribunal for Global Justice. When we have political strength, we can influence global policy, pushing for reparations language in international agreements. When we have technological capability, we can track and expose evasion, developing systems to verify commitments and document accountability. And when we build our mass movements, we can apply collective pressure from consumer boycotts to coordinated diplomatic initiatives. So, our preparation is precisely the transformation that builds our capacity to enforce what is owed to African people worldwide. And now let me share a little bit about how we can put this preparation into immediate action through Ma'at Zoa Zajuras. That is our Ma'at Action Learning Circles, or Ma'at Training Practice Rings. So Ma'at, as you know, the virtues of Ma'at are best represented by the terms truth, righteousness, harmony, balance, reciprocity, justice, and order. The goddess Ma'at that has guided so much of African civilization building. So these Ma'at circles are more necessary than ever as global instability increases and we face the polycrisis. The economic uncertainty facing Western nations, the shifting balance of global power, the acceleration of climate impacts, all these trends make our preparation not just important, but essential. The time for theoretical discussions has passed. Now is the time for practical, community-based preparation. A Ma'at Zoa Zajura is where our preparation takes living form. It's not just a study group. It's a space where families and community members practice self-repair through documenting our family histories or our stories before they're lost, gathering evidence of the Ma'angamizi impacts on our specific lineage or families, understanding how historical trauma manifests in our family health patterns, creating practical healing rituals that address our family and community specific needs, building connections between elders and youth in our families, and developing solutions for repair that can be implemented immediately. So a Ma'at Zoa Zajura can begin in your own home, with your own family. So how do you start? Well, first, gather some family members interested in exploring our people's story, but particularly your family story. You create a safe, warm, welcoming space for the sharing of family stories, especially the difficult ones, the challenging ones. Record the living memories of elders in our families using accessible technologies, and document how specific historical harms continue to affect your own family today. You can also develop family-based healing practices that draw on your family's and community ancestral traditions. And of course, we also want to hear about the Ma'angamizi resistors, those members of your families who were considered to be rebels, who stood up against the various phases and manifestations of the Ma'angamizi that we need to honor today and hold up. These circles connect across geographical boundaries and generations, forming networks of healing and preparation. Each family Ma'at Zoa Zajura contributes to our collective power by strengthening family bonds through shared purpose and understanding, creating evidence for specific reparatory justice claims relevant to your own lineage, building intergenerational knowledge transfer before crucial, vital information is lost, that is of historical value, developing practical solutions for community self-repairs that do not require external approval, and contributing to our collective documentation of not only the harms of the Ma'angamizi and the wrongs of the Ma'angamizi, but also our people's resistance and resilience. This vision of Ma'atso Zajuras forming across the diaspora and also on the motherland, that is Africa, in places like London, in Accra, in Kingston, in New York, in Johannesburg, all over the world, represents precisely the kind of preparation that Professor Chinwezu envisioned. By advocating for these action learning circles, we're planting seeds for a network of practical, community-based, transformative preparation that doesn't yet exist fully, but urgently needs to. When we say Yɛresiesie Yɛn Ho, we're preparing as individuals, as families, as communities, as a people. Through our Ma'atso Zajuras, we're creating spaces where preparation and healing happen in real time, where power is built from the ground up. Now, I want to invite you, that is all of you listening, to join this preparation directly. What steps are you taking to prepare yourself, your family, and your community to be able to effect and secure holistic reparatory justice by our own people's power? How are you documenting your family's story and experiences of the Ma'angamizi? What healing practices have you found effective in your own family-based preparatory work? Please, we're interested in hearing from you, so feel free to share your own preparation journey with us via mangamizitrust.org. You can also find us on Facebook, and we're on X at Ma'angamizitrust. Or you can email us ma'angamizitrust@gmail.com. With your permission, we'll feature your stories in future episodes, creating a web of shared knowledge and inspiration across our communities. Remember, every story shared strengthens our collective understanding and builds our capacity for effective action. As you move through your week, I invite you to reflect on these questions. First, what specific knowledge or skills do you need to develop to participate more effectively in the struggle to effect and secure holistic reparations, or what some of us refer to as the International Social Movement for African Reparations, or indeed any other reparations movement? Is it understanding international law, building community organizing skills, or preserving cultural knowledge? Identify one area for growth and commit to developing it. Second, who in your family or community holds the memories or knowledges that might be lost if they are not documented now? How will you capture those stories before they disappear? Third, what practical steps can you take this month to begin forming your own family Ma'atso Zajura? Who will you invite to participate? And what specific aspects of your family's experience would you focus on documenting first? And finally, how are you connecting your personal preparation to broader movements for reparations, Pan-Africanism that we've discussed today? Are you following developments with the African Union's declaration? Are you following developments of what's happening with the Alliance of Sahel States and other revolutionary struggles on the continent of Africa? Are you following developments around the upcoming London conference in April, commemorating the 1900 First Pan-African Conference? How might these larger forums and examples of applied reparations inform your own local or indeed global preparations work? This year, 2025, is especially significant as we mark the 125th anniversary of the first Pan-African Conference, which took place in London. As the government of Togo prepares to host the 9th Pan-African Congress in Lomé in December, the London conference taking place on April the 9th will bring us full circle, an opportunity to assess our progress as African people since the first gathering in 1900, Pan-African Conference, to articulate a clear vision for reparatory justice within a revitalized Pan-Africanism. So, my name is Esther Xosei, reminding you that our preparation is most powerful when we do it together, across generations, guided by the principles of Ma'at and Ubuntu. Thank you to Brother Daniel Kofi, our technical director, for putting this podcast together and for all of your support today. Now, in our next episode, we want you to join us again for a detailed guide to creating and sustaining your family's Ma'at Zoazadura. We'll explore practical tools for documentation, facilitation, and intergenerational learning and healing, turning our preparation into lasting power for change. We'll dive deeper into methodologies for mapping your family's experiences of the Maangamizi and connecting them to broader historical patterns. As we close, remember, in a world of accelerating change, our preparation determines whether we will be subjects or architects of the future. Yɛresiesie Yɛn Ho is not just our ancestral wisdom, it is our contemporary imperative.